Welcome back to Missing. I am Tim here today with Lance in this re-airing of an episode that was originally published in December of 2022. Lance, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic today, Tim. The episode that we have coming up is a really frustrating one. You can hear it in our voices as we're going through the details of this disgusting, horrific crime, this murder of a young woman in Vermont. But before we get into all that, Tim, let's start it off on a good note. Let's hear how you are doing today.
Well, thanks a lot for asking, Lance. I am doing well today. Yes, you're right. This case is incredibly tragic. It is the story of Melissa Jenkins, who was 33 years old when she was lured out of her house by Patricia and Allen Prue, and she was murdered. And this happened in 2012 in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, and Melissa was a school teacher at St. Johnsbury Academy, and so she was pretty well known in the area, Lance. And this case has always fascinated me, in big part because of our coverage into Maura Murray. This was a woman whose car was left on the side of the road with her 2-year-old son inside the car. But I just feel like this case could have been more similar if Melissa Jenkins didn't take a couple of precautions and, in a way, solve her own murder.
Yeah, we'll get to those precautions that she took, but you're right. This is a really fascinating crime in the sense that it has all these layers. She took the precautions. The tragedy still happened. Her 2-year-old son was in the car with her, who ended up giving a form of description of what happened to her, but getting to the Maura Murray reference, even to the Brianna Maitland reference, there's just a couple of things that, if done differently, Melissa would have fallen into those categories of missing persons. And then the other layer is trying to wrap your head around how two people met each other, they became partners in marriage, romantic partners, partners even in business, and then they became partners in murder. And this, the psychology behind that is really, really challenging to, like I said, wrap your head around. I mean, it's hard enough to meet somebody who is your, quote, soulmate anyway in a non-murderous scenario.
Right. And then to meet someone who shares the same ideas about violence as you is even more rare. I see what you're saying there. And Lance, we're going to do a little bit more on killer couples, and our episode that will be released on the public feed on Monday is with Maryann White, who researched this episode about Melissa Jenkins for us, and she joins us. And if you want to hear that conversation right now, you can do so on Missing Premium on Apple Podcasts now, and it's just $4.99 a month. You get episodes ad-free and sometimes early, like this one. And you'll also get our weekly bonus show, where we go in depth in some of the cases that we cover and a little bit about life behind the scenes here at Crawlspace Media.
And Tim, Maryann actually just texted me and wanted to know where she can follow us on social media.
Oh, cool. Yeah, she can find us at Missing CSM on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And we're going to take a quick break here for commercial, and we'll be right back with Jennifer Amell to discuss the murder of Melissa Jenkins. Welcome back to the podcast. Jennifer Amell, how are you today?
Very well. How are you today, Tim?
That's my line.
Stole it.
Well, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking, both of you. And we have a really compelling story today. It's really tragic. And right off the top here, I just want to thank our researcher, Maryann White, who helped us with this one.
Just want to say that Maryann White has the coolest name ever.
She has the coolest name, and she's got the coolest demeanor. And I can't state enough how much will it must take and how much you have to resolve yourself and steel yourself in order to put together a piece of research like this with the murder of Melissa Jenkins as perpetrated. Would you say perpetrated? Is that too weak of a word? By Patricia Prue and Allen Prue. To put together the details that she put together here without adding any of her own obvious emotion into it is really impressive to me. I didn't see the word disgusting in here once.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about this case without kind of showing your hand a little bit and being judgmental of the fact that these two committed this like heinous crime. Again, this is a different kind of case on missing. This is a solved case. We know what happened, but we think it's maybe psychologically interesting to probe.
Yeah, and a lot like the Christopher Wilder episode that we produced a few months ago, this one is similar in a way where a crime was committed, the body was found. My point being is that at one point during this, Melissa disappeared under very unique and suspicious circumstances. And like with the Christopher Wilder episode, we always want to try to make a connection between the people who are currently missing and perhaps these cases that are since solved. And are there similarities? Are there differences? What did the law enforcement, what did the investigation look like? How did it differ? How is it the same? Family reaction and things like that. So full picture.
Yeah, great point. You too. Thank you for that. And this one has some obvious similarities to some cases that we've already covered in depth and some cases that we're going to cover pretty soon. So Melissa Jenkins was 33 years old. She was born November 23rd, 1978. She was a single mom, was a school teacher, a science teacher at St. Johnsbury Academy in St. Johnsbury, Vermont.
And St. Johnsbury is a very tiny town in northeastern Vermont. It's kind of like, I want to say like on the same, it's just across the state from Burlington. That's a better way to think about it, with Montpelier, the capital of Vermont, and in between those. Most of the towns in Vermont are very tiny, and it has a small kind of community feel. So I can't imagine that Melissa Jenkins was a person who really thought that something like this could happen to her or that there was any danger in her town.
I mean, you bring up an interesting point right away where we talk about people being aware versus being paranoid, and some people saying, well, I don't think that'll happen to me because that's a 1 in a million incident where someone is abducted or whatever the circumstances are. It's easier to think that it's not going to happen to you, but ultimately these things do happen to people, and you should be aware of that and prepared for that. But it's a fine line. It's a fine balance, especially when you're living in an area in rural Vermont or any state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me wonder how the community reacted to this too. I mean, we hear it all the times, like, we didn't think that something like that could happen in our town. Up until something does happen like that. Yeah, I wonder if there was any kind of fallout from that, if people locked their doors, if they were like a little bit more suspicious of their neighbors. It's interesting what that does to like group psychology too.
Yeah, great point. And it's pretty clear that Melissa Jenkins affected a lot of people. She taught physics specifically and also coached freshman girls basketball and soccer. So she was pretty well known in that town. And for 18 years, she also waitressed weekends and summers at the Creamery restaurant in Danville, Vermont.
Mm-hmm. And it notes here in her obituary that she first waitressed at the Old Grandpa's Cigar in St. Johnsbury as a teenager. That's just like the coolest name for a restaurant I've ever heard. I wonder if it was a cigar bar or just called that. I don't know.
When I first learned that she had worked for 18 years at the same restaurant, the Creamery in Danville, there was something about that detail that just stood out to me. That stood out to me in a really endearing way, that for 18 years, so she was 33, so for 18 years in her mid to late teens, she had been with this restaurant. And that just shows like the dedication and the loyalty. And I'm sure part of the reason why she didn't leave was because she loved interacting with the customers. She probably had 24 regular customers that would come in to see her, and to take that job as a waitress at this restaurant, local restaurant, just seems so like cool to me that she would always make it a point to go back there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know it's what someone chooses to write in obituary, but by all accounts, Melissa seems like a wonderful person, a wonderful mother to her son Tyrell. It's what's called an editorial victim, like in the biz. I know we've talked about this before, but like Melissa really fits the bill for that. She's like pretty and blonde and like a good member of her community, a good citizen, a teacher. I can't imagine, again, how much her disappearance and murder affected this community.
And I didn't even think about that. Imagine she's your waitress. Melissa's my waitress at the creamery. And then you go in one day and you're told that they found her body. And you've known her since she was 20 years old. She's been waiting on you for 13 years. Terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I'm sure it affected everyone who knew her. And on March 25th, 2012, Melissa's 2-year-old son, Tyrell, was found alone in her idling SUV, and Melissa was nowhere in sight.
Yeah, so let's unpack what happened the evening of March 25th. Apparently, Melissa called her ex-boyfriend to tell him that the guy that used to plow her driveway had called Melissa and said his car was broken down. I don't know if this was an occurrence that happened frequently, like not necessarily that his car broke down, but that he would call Melissa, of all people, to help him out of a sticky situation. But apparently she decided to go and help him. I'm guessing she was a little suspicious of this call because she did place that call to her ex-boyfriend because she wanted somebody to know where she was going and what she was doing.
And we don't have any insider information on the relationship between Melissa and her ex-boyfriend, but I think just knowing that she called her ex-boyfriend as somebody to confide in and say, this is what I'm doing and where I'm going for her own safety, again, indicates to me how great of a person she probably was, because she could have called family members or other friends, but she, I guess, still had a good relationship, good enough with her ex-boyfriend, so that he would even be concerned enough to go back to check on her because he didn't hear back from her later that evening, and he's the one that found her car on the side of the road at 11:30. And unfortunately, actually, fortunately, Tyrell was inside, and the vehicle was still running, and that just opens up a whole other can of repulsive behavior. But backing that up to the ex-boyfriend being the first point of contact for Melissa, again, to me, that makes me think like they had a pretty amicable breakup and he was still in her life.
Yeah, I wonder if this ex-boyfriend was also the father of her son. We don't really have clarification on that. But yeah, you're right, Lance. It seems like they still had maintained a friendship. At least they still cared about one another. But I just want to draw our attention to the fact that she had the wherewithal to call someone before she went out. She already had to have that creepy feeling in her gut, something's off about this. But what was more powerful to her was her need to help and assist where she could. I think it's difficult, especially for women, and I don't want to make this a whole gendered discussion, but for a woman to refuse help, to refuse a nurturing act, comes with all of this baggage, right? And I don't think it's just that Melissa was too innocent to know that something was wrong, but her whole social training was to help where she can. And if especially a man asks her to help, she's gonna kind of look over that creepy feeling she has and go do what she needs to do.
Good point. She definitely sensed something was wrong, but still went to help someone that, she wasn't too familiar with and had been creeped out by in the past. So yeah, again, just goes to show how good of a person Melissa was. And when Melissa's ex-boyfriend arrived and found her son inside, he did call police. He told police that Melissa had been contacted by someone who used to plow her driveway and that she was on the way to help him with some roadside issues. And so when police arrived, they pretty immediately found a business card for a snow plowing company in Melissa's vehicle, which led them to a local handyman named Allen Prue, who had, in fact, plowed Melissa's driveway in the past.
I mean, this is just the first example of how poorly this was actually planned by the Prues and how anybody with any sort of function as a human being, you don't have to be a criminal mastermind. He didn't even pretend to be somebody else, but this wasn't the first time that he had contacted her.
I mean, Melissa essentially solved her own case, right? From the grave.
Yeah.
If she hadn't had the wherewithal to call her ex-boyfriend and say, this is the guy who contacted me and this is what I'm doing, even though the police found that business card in her car, I doubt they would have had the wherewithal to call the snowplow company to see if they had any knowledge of her, disappearance. So the only reason that snowplow driver, Allen Prue, was on their radar is because Melissa tipped off her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, excuse me.
Yeah, I would even go further to question how the card ended up in her car. Had it been there for years, for a while since she had known Allen, maybe from when she first met him, it was still in her car, or maybe she located it and put it in her car for that same reason that she called her ex-boyfriend.
Oh my God, if you're that scared of somebody, like, why again is she going to help him out in the night? I don't know what drove Melissa to go there that evening.
And based on their past, it seemed like they didn't have a very good relationship in the few times they interacted anyway.
No, so according to Melissa's ex-boyfriend, he told police that this guy, Allen Prue, had asked Melissa out on a few dates, and this made her extremely uncomfortable. I think we've all been there when we receive the attention of somebody that we are not interested in, and that just like unsettles you. It's like not necessarily that it's dangerous, but it's just unwelcome. So again, it's interesting why Melissa chose to go out that evening and respond to Allen's call.
Right? What was so urgent on his end? What did he say to her that made her say, I'm going to risk going to help this guy who pretty much every time I've been in some sort of engagement or exchange with him, it's been negative or creepy, and I'm going to take my child with me, as opposed to, hey, let me call a tow truck for you. Why aren't you calling a tow truck? Like, what did he say that was the thing that put her over the top to go help him? This is a guy who has a plow truck. If he's stuck somewhere, most plow trucks have like winches, like he's a handyman, like a jack of all trades. Like this is somebody who doesn't need the help of Melissa Jenkins to get him out of a ditch or something. Did he say like the car flipped over?
Well, again, how is she supposed to help him with that?
Yeah, I don't understand why he's calling her, like I wonder if she asked him why he was calling her, because you would think he would call a friend or something like that. I mean, this is a sort of vague acquaintance. He even showed up at her house drunk one time in 2011 and offered to plow her driveway the following winter for her, which is something of value, I suppose, that he was trying to show her, but really kind of not a great presentation, really bad presentation.
No, well, the sequence of those events is that, he was plowing her driveway. He asked her out on a date, made her uncomfortable, and Melissa discontinued the services because she was uncomfortable. And after that is when he showed up at her house drunk, like, please let me keep plowing your driveway.
Right.
Very strange.
Yeah. Very strange. And at that point, a little threatening.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And Melissa's a school teacher. She's not incapable of making good decisions. So again, I'm not trying to say that she made a bad decision here, because she was very kind and she wanted to help as many people as possible, and that is sort of what got the best of her, I guess. But what was it on his end? No one knows that he said to her that convinced someone like her to go help him. We can only speculate.
And police were quickly able to determine that Allen and Patricia Prue had called Melissa from a remote Vermont road using a burner phone around 8:30 p.m. that evening, claiming their car had broken down. And being the kind person that Melissa was, she did agree to come to the Prue's aid. However, when she arrived and exited her vehicle, Allen immediately attacked and grabbed Melissa and strangled her. And after putting Melissa in the back seat of their car, Patricia strangled her as well.
So this is awful. I mean, she's entrapped by this couple with the sole purpose of killing her. It's not that an argument happened. It's that these people planned a murder and then executed. I have a little thought here. It's like when Allen called Melissa, I wonder if Melissa heard Patricia's voice, or if he even had Patricia talk to Melissa at some point. Because, I mean, as a woman, that would allay my suspicions. Like, hey, it's just me and my wife out here. We're stuck. We know you're a good person. Can you come help us? It's not like some creepy guy waiting on the roadside for you. It's like, oh, it's just a couple in trouble. And so maybe that kind of like told Melissa that it was an innocent situation, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Patricia could have easily said, Allen's hammered. He got the car into a situation on the side of the road. We can't get it out. We don't want to call the cops because we don't want to get in trouble. Can you just do us a solid? I could totally see that being the case.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they preyed upon Melissa's good nature because as we find out as we go along, this was a whole premeditated attack.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
After Melissa was strangled by both Allen and Patricia, the couple removed her clothing, doused her body in bleach to remove any evidence, and then wrapped her body in a tarp. The Prues then dumped Melissa's body in the Connecticut River, and they used cinder blocks to weigh the body down and sticks and brush to help cover it up. Then they crossed the state border into New Hampshire, where they burned her clothes and the tarp they had wrapped her body in. So that was planned. They had to bring all of those things. It would be an impossible case to make that this was, a second or third degree murder.
Here's a very morbid thought experiment. We all have significant others. Could you imagine doing that to another human being with your significant other?
No, I mean, that's crazy. We were talking off air about this. It's like, at what point does the conversation become between you and your partner that's like, hey, I have this fantasy of murdering somebody. Do you? It must escalate from small things into that, but yikes.
Like, were they watching something on TV and, Patricia's like, oh, that'd be funny if we did, ha. And then he's like, oh, maybe we should try. I
don't know. I feel like, it has ties to sexuality, as we'll find out, and seems like a game and must escalate from risky behavior, risky games up to a point where, you take another's life. But yeah, I doubt it was just one day everything was normal and Patricia or Allen turned to their partner and were like, hey, you want to murder some lady? I don't think that's how it happened.
And the next day, on March 26th, 2012, Melissa's body was found, and her death was quickly ruled a homicide, and her body was covered in bruises and contusions, exhibiting signs that the police said she had suffered greatly. And a Vermont medical examiner later determined that she had died by strangulation.
Jeez, I wonder if she was beaten post-mortem or before she was strangled. Not that it's horrible no matter which way it happened, but maybe she didn't have to suffer as much pain if she was already dead.
I think she was alive because she wouldn't have bruised the same way.
And this couple isn't going through all of this effort and planning to kill her real quick and then beat her.
Yeah.
This couple is looking to beat her until she's almost dead and then keep her alive so that they could keep doing it.
Yeah, prolong the fantasy in some way.
Yep.
Ugh. Well, let's get into Allen and Patricia. How did this happen?
Yeah. And so Allen and Patricia met in the summer of 2008 on an online dating site. And after first building a long-distance relationship, Allen picked up Patricia from her Long Island home for a 2-week visit. And during that time, the two quickly became serious. And they soon married and began to explore sexually, and Patricia was bisexual.
And so far, nothing out of the ordinary. They meet on a online dating site. So even in 2008, I know things are a little bit more regulated and, you can make certain profiles specifically for what you're looking for, and the algorithms are much better today. Back then, probably not as good, but a lot of people met on online dating sites back in 2008. So you don't look at that and say psychopath killers. It's people meeting on a dating site. Fine. They married. They began to explore sexually. She was bisexual, so they wanted to open up their marriage. Lots of people do that. So again, nothing's suggesting psychotic killer.
And we do know that Allen was a little apprehensive about adding a partner to their, sexual experimentation. But Patricia was able to convince Allen. Lots of people say that she had this like power over him, like a strong hold on him from the beginning.
Now, if she's bisexual and they're bringing other partners into their relationship, we're assuming that they're bringing in females, because they did bring in other females for threesomes, and him being uncomfortable with that, we don't have any indication that it's another male, do we?
Mm-hmm. No, we don't.
Patricia is a bisexual and she wants to bring in other females, and if he's apprehensive about that, I'm just wondering if it's a sort of threatening power dynamic to have Patricia, who already has a particular hold over him, and there's even a quote from her later on at trial that kind of shows how she can flex her will about him, and we'll get to that, but I'm just wondering if two Patricias were more than he could handle because he wasn't sexually aligned with them.
That's potentially the case. I thought of it more like, I mean, you know, before he met Patricia, maybe he was a little square, like had never entertained a non-monogamous relationship, wasn't familiar with polyamory, or even not just polyamory, but adding a third into your sex life. So I don't know if the gender matters there. Maybe it did. I mean, I have no idea. Can't enter Ellen's brain, thankfully. But yeah, maybe that was just like not what he was used to, but it was going along with what Patricia wanted.
And from the outside, it appeared that the couple had a relatively conventional marriage. And Allen owned a snowplowing business, and Patricia often helped with the paperwork for their business. And this is how Allen met Melissa Jenkins in the winter of 2010. So they didn't even know her all that long.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely know that Allen expressed attraction to Melissa. And I wonder if this began with Allen himself. I mean, it seems the case because he was the one who went to Melissa's house initially, probably met her when he started plowing her driveway, became attracted to her, and that's how she came to Patricia's attention. She's like, oh, here's this other woman that my husband's already attracted to. That would be a perfect candidate to like introduce into our sex life in some way.
Yeah, and Melissa was known as being a nice neighbor and a person willing to help everyone, and she and her son were seen as the epitome of happiness, and the Prues admired this, as they wanted to start a family themselves. And the line between aspiration and attraction, however, was soon crossed.
I think we really have to unpack this. I mean, the Prues admired this. How long did they admire this before it turned into total resentment? And we have to have what she has.
Right, yeah. And I think the line there is pretty thin between admiring and resenting. Because I think resentment is kind of couched in jealousy, right? It's not that you don't want that person to have a happy life. It's that you also want a happy life and you don't have it for whatever reason. So, I mean, maybe that's where like the violence kind of bloomed out of, like that resentment against Melissa and her son. Because she and her son had what Allen and Patricia could not have for whatever reason.
But they left Ty in the car. Like if that's, if that's true, I don't know. Maybe they would have tried to take the kid,
Mm-hmm.
I'm confused by that. And I think a lot of these answers are in the trial. Actually, it seems like, because according to the prosecution, the couple hunted down Melissa Jenkins on the night of March 25th, 2012. And Allen had stated that he wanted to, quote, get a girl, unquote. Although it initially wasn't planned to be forcefully. So, as you noted, they approached a woman that Allen had previously been attracted to, that they both knew that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
And other people said that their plan all along was to kidnap someone to engage in sexual encounters with.
Well, in some sense, they had to be prepared for violence, right? Because they had all the accoutrements of violence. They had the cinder block to get rid of her body. They had the tarp. They had the bleach. Like, I guess you could make the point that maybe this was purchased after the fact, but I don't think that came out in trial. Or at least we don't have note of it, that they purchased it after. It must have been before.
They had enough wherewithal to cross state lines to try to dispose of the body. So this wasn't like a, oops, we killed her. I don't want to make light of this, but it wasn't like our plan to kidnap and engage sexually with somebody against their will all of a sudden turned to murder, and now we have to figure out the best way to get rid of this body. Honey, you go get the bleach. I'm going to see how far it is from the New Hampshire border.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Yeah. It was pretty close, but yeah, it definitely didn't help them in this case that some evidence and Melissa's body were separated over state lines. It might have even hurt, but it seems like Melissa's body was found pretty much right away. Otherwise, the FBI likely would have been called in.
Yeah, but like the whole setup wouldn't make sense if it wasn't premeditated, or they didn't intend to kidnap her by force, right? Or they wouldn't have lied to her over a burner phone and
right,
like
exactly.
got her to come to the side of a road, you know. They would have called her and been like, "Do you want to come out for a drink?" Like, they weren't normal about it.
I wonder if they just didn't expect Ty to be in the car.
Maybe, but they left him anyway.
They left him anyway, yeah.
They could have just aborted the plan if they were, worried about the kid.
Yeah.
Yep, or concerned whatsoever about what he might see.
Right. But no, they chose extreme violence.
Yeah, they chose to escalate it. Yep.
Yeah, right in front of Melissa's son.
Crazy.
And one of the frustrating parts of looking at all of the research that Maryann put together is the part about Allen's mom, Donna. And when Allen and Patricia were first arrested, Donna described Allen as a good boy, that's a quote, who never got into trouble. And she also shared that when his father became sick, he was there to take care of him. Once he passed away, he vowed to always be there to take care of and look over his mother. And a quote from the mom is, I do not believe he would ever do this because he didn't have it in him. I have nothing against her, meaning Patricia. I don't have nothing bad to say about either one. How blind are you there? This was the only part that I wanted to read verbatim, like as a quote, because it just is infuriating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a loving mother who wants to see her child and his wife as good people and can't really compute that they would be capable of doing something like this. But this goes to like a point that we've brought up a couple times in these cases where we're talking about murderers and assailants of crimes, that they don't have to be all evil. They're not, spawns of Satan or something where like their whole lives people are like just waiting for them to be murderers. I mean, Allen could have been a docile man. He could very well have cared for his father and told his mother he would be there to care for her. But it doesn't mean that he had this other kind of sick and twisted fantasy life with his wife.
Yeah, I always think it's interesting when you look at these criminals. She mentions he doesn't have a violent past. It's almost like this case kind of reminds me of a chemical reaction or something. Like neither one alone led to murder, but together it did.
Oh, it's an interesting way to say it, Tim.
Yeah. And do you see her as a loving mother, or do you see this as a scenario where she's a very domineering mother and he's a very docile boy and she takes advantage of that and he ends up marrying somebody who's a lot like his mother and ends up doing things that this person, going to Tim's analogy with a chemical reaction, he needed to be that to Patricia as he needed Patricia to be his mom to him.
Ooh, getting real Freudian, Lance.
I just watched Psycho, so I got the psychologist's speech at the end memorized.
Well, it's a very John Douglas approach as well, because a lot of his work focuses on the murderer's relationship with their mother. So you could be onto something here with that, Lance, and I think maybe that quote is more revealing than we realize right here during this recording.
Yeah, you could definitely read it as her just like wanting to believe the best of her son and daughter-in-law, but you can also read it like she's trying to steer their narrative, like control the media coverage over it. It's like he couldn't possibly have done it, you know? So I don't know. I don't know what to think about that.
Right, what she doesn't realize is that became the quote itself, you know, like pretty much whatever she said. If she said, oh, I expected him to do it all along, that would have been a headline. But obviously if you say what she said, I don't believe he would ever do this, like that's going to be a little story in itself.
Mm-hmm.
What she should have said is, I'm shocked and saddened for Melissa, her son, the Jenkins family. I can't believe that something like this would ever befall upon any family. Like that's something that she should have said. These are very deliberate words.
Sure. But I imagine that this was a pretrial quote too. So she had, I don't know if she was counseled by the lawyers to not like say anything that would implicate her son's guilt. There's a whole kind of concoction of behavior that's controlled when a trial is about to happen.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. And Patricia initially claimed that she had nothing to do with the murder. And soon, however, investigators discovered she had searched the internet on her personal computer for, quote, how to kidnap a girl, end quote.
I'm just shaking my head.
Yeah, if it wasn't so goddamn horrifying, it would be a comedy.
I know. I mean, this is so dumb. It's very dumb. It's how not to get away with murder. But like, man. How can somebody have such a dumb idea and execute it so dumbly and then still cause this much damage? It's baffling.
I'll add, though, that I'm not sure how much of a reach it would be to suggest this could have been a crime that they did get away with.
Yeah. I know.
Like if Melissa didn't place that phone call and that business card wasn't in her car, I mean, it's quite possible that this case, and Melissa hadn't been found. It's definitely very possible that they would still be out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So not only did Patricia Google how to kidnap a girl, but the couple had acquired a stun gun and a prepaid burner cell phone, which we mentioned earlier. So this was the phone that was used to call and lure Melissa out of her home that night. Patricia planned to use the insanity defense in her trial. Her lawyer argued that she suffered from PTSD, but we don't know what traumatic event occurred in her life, although I'm not discounting that, and possibly dissociative identity disorder, which is a disorder that's hotly debated among psychiatrists and psychologists.
So do you folks think that this is just a lawyer, like, copying a plea here?
Well, it's interesting that Maryann, our researcher, notes that Patricia had planned to use the insanity defense. Like, was this something that she thought of before the murder even? Like, if she was caught? Or is it something that she and her lawyer came up with on the fly? Or was it true that she did suffer from these things and didn't have control over her actions? Myself, I'm going with, like, this is an attempt to get away with murder.
Yeah, for sure. And Allen recanted his original confession, and he went to trial with a not guilty plea. And both he and his mother pinned the crime on Patricia, saying during his sentencing in December of 2014, quote, I feel terrible about what's happened here. I can't imagine what Melissa's family is going through. I just wanted to tell the court that I'm convicted of a crime that I did not commit, nor did I have anything to do with. The only thing I am guilty of is bringing the person who committed this crime to Vermont, and for that, I'm truly sorry. That's it. End quote.
Stop it.
And on the stand, Patricia invoked the Fifth Amendment under her lawyer's discretion and refused to answer most questions asked of her.
As most people pleading the insanity defense do.
I mean, yeah, probably.
You're joking there. Are you joking there?
No, don't they?
Yeah. They wouldn't put him on the stand.
True, they wouldn't even put him on the stand, yeah.
She answers some questions and then pleads the fifth for both. I feel like that throws out your insanity attempt right there, because you're saying, like, I know that answering this is okay for me, and if I were to answer this would be bad for me. So that displays not that you're not insane.
Well, I guess at the time of trial, which I guess is the point of an insane. Well, competency to stand trial is different from, like, being responsible for one's actions during the committing of a crime. So maybe her point was that she had suffered some kind of psychotic episode that was encapsulated conveniently around the time of the murder, and that's why she wasn't in control of her actions. But now, having passed through that psychotic event, is now back in her right mind, but knows that any question she's going to answer is going to incriminate her further. I don't know. All reads like a tactic to me.
Yes. And it's so easy to kind of go off on what Allen said about not being responsible for it. And we can do it from, podcaster's point of view. But the judge, Robert Bent, said it best, quote, "The court does conclude that the attack was primarily driven by Mr. Prue. He has the strength. He's the man who has the ability to carry multiple bundles of shingles up a roof because he was a former roofer. He's short in stature, but he's strong. He was able to drive her to the ground and choke her out. Mrs. Jenkins was rendered senseless by Mr. Prue. His power was essential to the success of this process. And I think the judge, boiled it down to a very simple concept. The amount of damage on Melissa's body was conducive to two people. And one of them had to have been a man because of the strength that he possessed in relation to the damage on her body.
The prosecution maybe didn't have any physical labor to display Patricia's strength, you know what I mean? But they clearly had Allen's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the judge continued by saying they hunted their victim as a pair. This was a hunt, and they were acting as a pair, a pack of two. It couldn't have been done without both.
Yeah, and I fundamentally agree with the court here.
Yeah.
I think it was premeditated between the both of them. They had a plan, and they committed murder together. I will say, and this is with the caveat being that I'm not willing to defend the Prues. I think it's abhorrent what they've done. But the law has a hard time recognizing coercion, right? So we can only speculate about what the relationship was like. I mean, Lance, you brought it up too with how Alan's mother was. Like, did he choose this domineering woman because his mother was domineering? It's like, yeah, he could have been led to believe it's okay because he wanted to please his woman in some sense and had kind of a weak moral character that all that mattered to him was pleasing this woman who professed love to him. But it definitely doesn't excuse him from this murder. You definitely couldn't make the case that he was coerced into committing murder.
No, I think it's pretty typical that a couple or someone like a group of people will turn on each other. So unfortunately, I don't think you're ever going to get the honest to God truth from either one of them.
Yeah, and it could very well be the opposite too. Like, Alan could have been the one who originated the idea and coerced Patricia into it. We don't know. Mm-hmm. The narrative we have through court is that Patricia was the bisexual one, and she's the one who introduced this new and different sex life, which I'm sure even in 2012 would have registered as kind of strange in court if it's a bunch of puritanical people. But you know what I'm trying to say? It's it could have happened either way.
And so instead of using the insanity defense, Patricia Prue ultimately pled guilty to attempted murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And during her sentencing, she expressed shame toward her husband, saying, quote, "I want to apologize personally for the fact that my husband wasn't a strong enough human being to admit his wrongs and to be able to take his rightful punishment willingly," end quote.
That's the line that I was talking about in the beginning, where she showed some of her true colors in terms of what their relationship was like. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of that, and it's just my opinion, I think a lot of that was their relationship. A lot of her telling him how he wasn't emotionally or intellectually strong enough to do certain things.
Yeah, that's possible.
I think it sounded like a final stab at him.
Yeah, and I think this whole thing boils down to power dynamics, right? It's if Alan felt powerless and he felt like his partner had more power over him, a way to regain that power was to take it from another woman.
And in her sentencing argument, Caledonia County State's Attorney Lisa Warren stated, quote, "March 25th, 2012 was about Alan and Patricia Prue fulfilling their obsession with Melissa Jenkins. They had watched her and followed her for some time. They found her sexually attractive, and they felt snubbed by her because she didn't want Allen Prue to plow for her. They fantasized about her sexually and knew she would not agree to any such thing, and as punishment, they strangled her, electrocuted her, kicked her and beat her, played with her, and dumped her body in the river."
Jeez. I didn't know about the electrocution part.
They had bought a stun gun.
Ah, right.
Yeah. What do you make of the played with her part?
I don't know if that was meant to be sexually or just
toyed with her?
Toyed with her in some way. Ugh, I don't even want to speculate.
Either way, it's absolutely, like you said, Jen, abhorrent. It's just
Sadistic.
sadistic. Yes. And one of the more emotional aspects of this is that Melissa's, like we mentioned before, 2-year-old son, 2 years old, Ty, was found at the scene of his mother's abduction. He was alone and asleep in the still running car. That is so tragic and sad. I mean, imagine that. Like, that is so sad. And then he further went on to demonstrate for the detectives how his mother had been strangled. He was an actual witness for the detectives. And he saw that. And then he fell asleep.
I mean, clearly he didn't understand what had happened, obviously, because he's only 2.
Or he emotionally shut down. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He couldn't, like, that was the reaction he had to have. Because he's 2. Like, he doesn't know, like, I have to call the police. Like, to comfort, I feel like that was just his body and his mind just being like, it couldn't take it.
Yeah, probably pretty hard to comprehend someone hurting your mom, at that age.
I hope Ty is okay now. I bet he has a lot of things to work through in therapy, but hopefully he's living a good, happy life.
I hope the Prues think about him every day.
And Allen Prue is sentenced to life in prison for kidnapping, along with a concurrent 50 years to life sentence for first-degree murder and a 5-year sentence for conspiracy to commit murder. And the structure of Allen's sentence means that he will not be eligible to apply for parole for 50 years, and he will be 82 years old at that time.
Allen Prue then appealed his case to the Vermont Supreme Court, but in 2016, the court rejected his appeal for a new trial by unanimous decision. Thank God.
And at the end of 2021, Patricia Prue requested her conviction be thrown out, and she requested to be given a new trial due to alleged misconduct on behalf of the prosecutor, judge, and her defense attorney during her original trial in which she was convicted. I'm sorry. There are so many people in prison who can't get their convictions over or thrown out, and they are actually innocent. Like, come on.
Yeah, well, it seems like the court is seeing right through these efforts. Patricia hand-wrote a post-conviction relief petition, which was filed in November of 2021, claiming that she had ineffective counsel, that she was under extreme stress and she could not aid in her own defense. She's asking that her conviction be thrown out and she be given a new trial yet again. As far as we can tell, and our research tells us, the court has not yet ruled on this, but I certainly hope that they see through these efforts. Unless, there's something crazy that happened that we don't know about.
Well, if we could end this on any bit of an up note, the reaction of the town and family and community is really inspirational.
Yeah, a memorial service was held on the campus of St. Johnsbury Academy after Melissa was murdered. And more than 2,000 people attended the memorial service to remember the teacher and mother, and the community wore pink, and pink ribbons were distributed and worn in her honor.
And then Friends of Melissa Jenkins established a perpetual scholarship as a permanent memorial to honor her life and her dedication and devotion to her students. There's a scholarship in her name, and it's awarded annually to a graduating senior at Danville High School, which is Melissa's alma mater, as a member of the class of 1996. And the award will be made on the basis of a candidate's demonstration of those traits that Melissa best exhibited, which were friendship, leadership, development, support of youth as a teacher and a coach, and commitment to and support of family and friends. For this scholarship, a preference is given to candidates who plan to enter an accredited college program in the field of primary or secondary education. So that's a wonderful kind of lasting effect of Melissa's life.
And you had mentioned, Tim, that more than 2,000 people attended the memorial service, and I did a quick lookup of the population of St. Johnsbury, Vermont in 2012, and it was just over 6,000.
Wow. Like half the town.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, she affected a lot of people.
She did, and her memory is going to further impact people's lives. With the scholarship fund, and they have the annual, I think it's annual, the fun run walk that raises money, the 5K run walk that raises money for the memorial scholarship. So all of these things are being put in place by the people who she impacted. So if anything good is to come of this, this is it. But I'm sure they would all give that up to have this not happen.
Yeah, to get Melissa back. I know we were talking off mic about the reasons why a couple would come together and how a couple would come together to commit a murder. And we were kind of surprised recently. I mean, you guys had the privilege to interview Dr. Michael Arntfield, that author and former police officer in Ontario, I think.
Yeah.
That he's written a lot on, like, the statistics of murder. And what was the quote, Tim? What percentage?
He says up to 40% of serial killers had accomplices at one point during that process.
Yeah.
Whether that's luring or helping to dispose or something like that, but somewhere between 30 to 40%. And he cites his colleague with that statistic. But yeah, it was higher, much higher than I would have expected that to be.
Yeah. I mean, again, we have this like kind of cultural lore around murderers and serial killers, that they're lone wolves, that they stalk people in the night and they live this kind of like lonely, depressing life. But it's 40% of them have relationships in their life so strong that this person would come to their aid to help dispose a body, let alone help you commit the murder itself. It's absolutely crazy.
That means that there's 40% out there who know that somebody killed somebody, because if you're acting as an accomplice, it doesn't mean specifically you're aiding in the actual murder. Like you said, you could be disposing of the body. You could be simply making the phone call that lures the person to a location, and you could have done that without realizing this is going to be a murder. Maybe it was in the back of your mind or whatever, but you still have the knowledge that it happened and you're pretty sure who did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's like a really dark stat, because that is, I think, specifically about serial killings too, which Patricia and Allen Prue were not serial killers that we know of. Although I have to wonder, had they not been arrested for Melissa Jenkins' murder, if they would have turned into that.
I doubt they would have stopped there. I mean,
yeah.
If you get some kind of strange sexual satisfaction at overpowering a woman and murdering her, like, there's no way that will be a one and done. You're going to want to keep feeding that obsession, that compulsion.
They would have ended up killing each other at some point.
You think so?
I mean, just the relationship. If they needed something to keep escalating, it wouldn't have been enough for either of them, or it would have been too out of control for one of them.
Please make sure to like and subscribe. And tomorrow we're airing sort of a part 2 to this topic with researcher Maryann White. Thanks a lot for listening.